Let's just talk about these figures, Mick, first of all. 7.1 million raised. Is that a big amount?
It is for a short period of time and with a relatively unusual event. I mean, face it, you wouldn't expect ordinarily that getting arrested and charged with a crime would help someone raise money, but Donald Trump has proven again and again that he's been able to turn all of these criminal efforts to his advantage politically.
And who do we think that money is coming from, 7.1 million? Because I read a really, really insightful article at the weekend that talked about the numbers of younger Republicans who are supporting Trump. And the percentage seemed to be well under a third of under 35s, it was suggesting, in many of these caucuses that are taking place. Under 35 Republican voters are not supporting him. All his support comes in those older age groups.
I've not seen the data on the age. It's an interesting question. I have seen the data on the average size of the donation, which is under $40. So you're
Wow.
talking about ordinary people, rank and file people who somehow identify with Donald Trump. Some people have called it a personality cult. I'm not sure it's that yet. I'm not really sure what the official definition of that is yet. But these are not people giving him $1,000 or $10,000 or certainly $100,000. These are folks giving him $25, and those are folks who, for whom that's a lot of money, and that means they're heavily invested in seeing Donald Trump win. So it's the best kind of money from a political standpoint. You'd always, always, always rather have $1,010 donations
Yes.
than one $10,000 donations when you're in that line of work.
So take me through how you think this is going to play out now with his timescale, because of course he didn't go to the first debate last week. How's this going to play out with him? Because we already know that 2024 is an incredibly busy year in courts for Donald Trump. But how's this going to play out over the next few weeks when it comes to these debates and these events that he's expected to turn up to?
I'll give you the 85% likelihood. There's always the chance that something strange comes in and there's an event that nobody anticipated. But basically, what we expect to happen at this point is that Donald Trump will continue to poll someplace in the mid 40s to mid 50s in terms of the Republican primary voters. He'll continue not to debate. And why would he? If you're lapping the field, why would you give him a chance to catch up? There's only one way to go from there, and that's down. I don't think that his various trial dates and appearances will hurt him. If anything else, it appears to have helped him on the fundraising, but we also haven't talked about the impact it has on the other candidates. There's only so many minutes in this radio program. And if Donald Trump is making news every single day, it's minutes that are available to Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and Tim Scott and Mike Pence. So you're going to see, I think, for the next several months, exactly what you've seen in the last several, which is Donald Trump will somehow magically turn criminal charges against the former president into a political asset, and will continue to dominate the Republican primaries.
Mick, what do you make of these dates? So we now know that the criminal trial for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, which are the most serious charges, they're going to take place on the 4th of March of 2024. Now, essentially, this has rejected Trump's plan to delay the cases. Is that a blow?
No, not really. It's a blow, really, to the Department of Justice. We are supposed to have an unwritten rule in this country that the Department of Justice does not get involved in elections. There's a long-standing tradition there. And I get the fact they want to charge him with a crime. They think he's committed a crime. I respect that. There's an institutional interest they have in enforcing the law. But if you're going to charge the former president, who's also now the leading Republican candidate, and you put the trial the day before a big primary, it's hard not to make that look like it's politically motivated. And again, it may just be a ham-fisted approach by this Department of Justice, but they're certainly feeding that narrative that this is politically motivated, or at least allowing Trump, giving Trump plenty of evidence that it is. So at the end of the day, though, Rick, I don't think it makes a difference, because, again, if he's polling at 50%, he's not campaigning much now as it is. He doesn't have to. He's so far ahead of everybody else that he's doing a small handful of events every now and then. He's not living in Iowa like all the other candidates are. He simply doesn't have to. So I think, again, unless we see some dramatic change in that 15% likelihood type of scenario, I think Donald Trump will continue to do what he's done and continue to succeed at it.
Mick, what's your personal feeling about the way he's approaching this campaign and essentially, dismissing his opponents by not turning up?
Well, listen, I got a lot of problems with Donald Trump, including how he behaved on January 6th. But from a political standpoint, he's doing this exactly correctly. There's no reason to show up. The only weakness, I guess, if I was advising him today, which I am not, I'd say, look, boss, here's a problem. You don't show up for the Republican primary. It's going to give Joe Biden every excuse in the world not to debate you in the general election. And we would love to debate him in the general election. That would be what I would be advising Trump. By the way, Biden put out a statement. The Biden team put out a statement as soon as Trump didn't show up last week to the debate that they were considering not debating at all in the general. So it seems like that might be playing out. But no, I think politically, how do you argue? I thought he'd be polling at 35% right about now, maybe weaker than that. And he's polling, I saw numbers today at 52% in Iowa. So it's hard to draw any fault in how he's been managing this situation.
Now, you mentioned Iowa there, which is obviously a key in all this, Mick. Talk us through from, for people in the UK who aren't always used to these big dates and how these caucuses work, what we need to be looking out for. So you've got Iowa and you've got something called Super Tuesday. Explain to us how this all pans out and what we need to be watching out for.
Oh, it's a uniquely American thing, and even for us, it's different this year. There's really no hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, you'll have the Iowa caucuses, which is not a primary. It's just a bunch of people going to their local churches and their local high schools and talking about who they want to support, and then they caucus. And then they have sort of a show of hands or a voice vote or something like that. And that's sort of how they determine who wins. It's a very, very old American tradition. The first primary is in New Hampshire, which would be a couple weeks after that. And then there's the big primary in South Carolina a full month later. In years past, they have been 2 or 3 days later. This year, there'll be 30 days fully between New Hampshire and South Carolina. So it'll be allowing for a lot of campaigning and so forth. Super Tuesday then is the first time we actually get something that most people think looks like an election. It'd be a bunch of states on one day. There's no caucuses. It's all primaries. People go and vote, put their ballots in the box, etc. So about, I think, 20% of the delegates necessary to be elected the nominee are decided by the end of Super Tuesday. So it's a big day. But again, if you're Donald Trump and you're polling at 50% and nobody else is polling above 10, the fact you might be in trial the day before that election probably doesn't move the needle even just a little bit.
Yeah. And then so we should all find out by about when who the Republican candidate confirmed will be to take on Joe Biden?
Well, it depends. If Iowa is close, if New Hampshire is close, if South Carolina is close, then I think you might go late into the spring. I think last year we knew, or last election cycle, we knew probably around April or May that Donald Trump was going to be the nominee. If he's pulling 40% and someone else is pulling 30%, then it could go on very, very long. If he runs the table in those first 5 or 6 primaries, including Super Tuesday, then you can pretty much we will know probably first week in March who the Republican nominee will be, and it would be Donald Trump.
And finally, Mick, I'm guessing if he did get a call and he did get the job and he did go back to the White House, then and he said, "Mick, do you fancy coming back?" I'm guessing the answer is no.
I've done my time. I've served my country. I'm very proud of the work I did. I'm very, very disappointed with the president's behavior on January 6th. I think he does run the severe risk of being of convicted in at least the document charge out of the federal case in Florida and maybe the case in Georgia. I think the other cases will be difficult. And I just don't know why we think we need to have a 70-year-old former president leading our party when we have such good young talent. Plus, I think Donald Trump runs the severe risk of losing to Joe Biden, and I don't think many other Republicans would lose to him.